Thanks so much. One note, President Obama noting these election victories for these down-ballot races, hundreds and hundreds of which were lost, it should be said, during his administration.
There you go.
Joining us now, CNN editor-at-large Chris Cillizza, CNN political commentator and Federalist senior writer Mary Catherine Ham, and Democratic strategist and CNN political commentator Maria Cardona. You know, Chris Cillizza, the political strategist Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys wrote, "Catch a wave and you're sitting on top of the world." It's in a great political book, by the way. Look, what is the nature of this wave and what does it tell you?
It tells me that the greatest uniting factor in what is still a fractious Democratic Party is Donald Trump. And that distaste for Donald Trump, particularly in Virginia, which is a race I've looked at the closest, the distaste for Donald Trump drove suburban voters into Ralph Northam's camp and activated the liberal base in a major way. Look, Ed Gillespie runs in 2014 against Mark Warner for the Senate, and he wins Loudoun County, which is an exurban county, well, I was going to say 20 minutes, but that's no traffic, probably 45 minutes west of D.C. Last night, he loses it by 23,000 votes to Ralph Northam. Why? Donald Trump. The first year of Trump, this is that referendum, right? Some of these people voted for Donald Trump, but now they're seeing what they are getting, and they are not liking it. It's hard for me, if you look at the numbers and the exit polling in the state, to conclude anything else.
So talking about those numbers, Mary Catherine and Chris wrote about it in The Point late last night. You've got twice as many voters in Virginia voting in part because they are voting in opposition to the president, 34% versus 17% who put out their vote in part to support the president. And then you have Virginia Republican Representative Scott Taylor calling this a referendum on this administration. How can can anyone argue otherwise?
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue otherwise. First of all, the big winner, the mental health of the resistance, which I'm not sure how long they could have held out without one to hang their hat on. And this is a big, unequivocal one. And I think, look, there's a deeper problem here, which is, Chris points out that Loudoun County number, which is killer when you're looking at another election in the future. A lot of these delegate races that they're losing, that Republicans lost, are in these moderate exurban areas where Republicans had hung on for a while, but now maybe in a state that Trump lost, you can succeed. And the twist or the turn from what Ed Gillespie turned out in 2014 shows us what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. So, Maria Cardona, I am sure you are feeling good this morning, and these were big wins for the Democratic Party, but there are still big problems for the Democratic Party. We had a poll out yesterday which showed that only 37% of the country have a favorable opinion of the Democrats, which is down from 44% in March, and the highest unfavorable view since way back in 1992. So how do you harness what happened yesterday to something that will help you improve those numbers?
Well, I think that what those numbers represent is certainly that people are turned off by parties in general. I mean, the Republican Party numbers were worse. And, moving forward, I think what we have to do and what we did in Virginia, New Jersey, and all over the country is that we made these elections relevant to people's lives. We also made sure that they understood that what President Trump was doing at the top also really mattered. And what I mean by that is that I do believe that last night's election results were a resounding rejection of the uncivil conversation coming from the top, the hatred, the bigotry, the misogyny, the fact that he made so many of America's communities feel unsafe. He made so many of America's communities feel unwelcome. He made so many of America's communities feel like he had no interest in being their president. And that really matters in these kinds of elections because you have New Jersey, you have Virginia, you had all of the other down ballot elections across the country that really represent the face of America. And so what this underscored to me is that to this day, 1 year after his election, President Trump still has either no interest in being the president for a United States of America, or he doesn't know how to, and that he is still temperamentally unfit and wholly unprepared to take that job or to have that job.
So, Chris, in Maria's words, this was an election across the board that was a, quote, resounding rejection of the president. But look no further than the exit polls for the New Jersey governor race, right? Mm-hmm. And what they show us is that 59% of voters said Trump wasn't a factor. Almost 60%, almost 6 in 10 said that. So it didn't carry that way across.
Yeah, here's what I would say. I honestly think if you look at, Poppy, if you look at the sort of broad scope of the election yesterday, obviously Virginia and New Jersey governors, the two biggest ones, statewide offices, et cetera, et cetera. I think you have to take New Jersey out of that, and I'll tell you why. Chris Christie, the outgoing Republican governor, was at like 11 or 12% popularity going into that election. Kim Guadagno was running as is his sitting lieutenant governor. She tried to distance herself from him. I actually think that one is somewhat anomalous because of Christie's personality, the sort of and the negativity around him. But I think if you look at the Medicaid expansion referendum in Maine, I think if you look at the Manchester mayor's race, where a Democrat won. Look, Ryan Nobles mentioned this, but the idea that Democrats might fight to a 50-50 tie in the House of Delegates in Virginia, they were down 66-34 going into last night. No one thought that was possible. Those things seem to me difficult to taken together to dismiss as a series of unrelated events. It strikes me that how those races were won and where they were won it is about Donald Trump in his first year in office.
So, Mary Catherine Ham, the president thinks differently. He thinks the problem that Ed Gillespie had is that he didn't run close enough to Donald Trump. He said Ed Gillespie worked hard but did not embrace me or what I stand for. So is the lesson here for Republican candidates going forward to be more Trumpy or less Trumpy?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, John. Thank you for posing it. Look, Virginia has two very distinct sections of the state. Gillespie actually did run up numbers in Southwest Virginia, where my family is from, which is a very different electorate than Northern Virginia. In his 2014 race, he focused on those Northern Virginia exurban voters. That's why he won Loudoun County. He was trying to do a dance, and that dance failed, I think, with Trump sort of symbolically at the top of the ticket. The question, I think, moving forward for Republicans is when you're looking at Colorado, and there was some bad data out of there on some local races and stuff for what the Republican future looks like, is how in these purplish / evolving into blue states, you do that dance and succeed. I think you can still in a red state, and I think the biggest question for the future of politics is in these Rust Belt states where we haven't really seen it tested yet.
Right.
Maria, is there a risk in getting egos that are too inflated off of last night for Democrats? I mean, Tom Perez's words, the president's coming back to a different America than he left. Is there a risk here? Do you have a caution for your fellow Democrats?
Absolutely. And my caution is let's not sleep on our laurels. Let's not take anything for granted. This is the first step in what I believe is a long road back to the majority, and it will be a long road. But I do think that Democrats do deserve to feel good today. Even yesterday, we were all talking on the air about, the possibility that Gillespie could win, and it ended up being kind of a blowout. And so I think that Democrats absolutely need to be careful moving forward. We need to really plan the pathway for 2018, and that is happening now. But I think one of the lessons that we can take, and you have to give credit where credit is due, the DNC and Tom Perez and all of the committees and all of the allied progressive groups, and they were all out there, including Emerge America, including Our Revolution, working together, even while some of these fissures in the Democratic Party were being made public. They knocked on 1 million more doors than Terry McAuliffe did 4 years ago. And so that is the pathway. You have to organize, you have to mobilize, and you have to energize a lot of these voters who perhaps didn't come out in 2016 because they thought it was a done deal for Hillary Clinton, and to make it relevant for their everyday lives.
Crystal, is it 20 seconds or less Republican retirements? A lot of people watching that today.
Yes, I think you should. If you're in the governing wing of the Republican Party, yesterday was a bad day. And remember, Frank LoBiondo retired in New Jersey, swing seat, governing wing of the Republican Party. Now, he retired before the election results, but go read his statement about why he decided to leave.
He might retire twice after the election, is what you're saying. All right, Crystal Liz and Maria Cardona, Mary Catherine Ham, thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Ahead for us, a lot this morning.